As a portrait photographer, the 85mm is never far from my side. I absolutely love the focal length, and since I bought the Canon 1.2, I've had a lot of people asking me again, if I already own the 70-200, is there any advantage to buying the 85? Today I want to compare the two, specifically how they relate to portraiture. Okay, so there's a couple of things to think about, and it kind of comes down when you're comparing any zoom to a prime. So if you're comparing like the 50mm prime, which a lot of people own, to the 24-70 2.8, or the 70-200 to the 85. The difference is obviously a zoom, you get a bigger range in terms of how much of the focal range you can have. So if you want to bring them in tight or zoom out to get a wider shot. And then your fastest working aperture, which, you know, is great if you have a 1.8, 1.4 to be able to capture more light in low light situations. But the other big reason why portrait photographers love it is what it can do for your depth of field to create the really nice blurred out backgrounds. People often say that a 200mm at 2.8 is just as good in terms of its rendering out of focus areas as a 1.4 at 85mm. But I want to talk to you a little bit about that, because there's a couple of things that come down to how the bokeh looks. So it's not just how small is the depth of field. That has a big part to play, but the way different lenses render the out of focus areas varies. So let me just do a little comparison to show you these two, both at 85mm, both at f2.8, and you'll see that there is some difference between them. Okay, these first two images are taken with the 70-200 at 85mm at f2.8. Take a good look at the background areas. And then this one's using the 85mm prime at 2.8. Here we go, Tina thought that the 70-200 looked like a lens cup, so she decided to drink from it and then, I don't know, deep-throat it or something. Anyway, looking back at the 70-200, there is a difference. And there again is the 85. Okay. The other thing is, the big advantage of the 70-200 is that it gives you that range. So I'll get a couple of different shots here at 70 and then at 200 to show you the different perspective and what it does to the background. So these shots demonstrate what we call compression with a telephoto lens. And compression doesn't mean that it necessarily stacks things up. It's just that you get a narrower field of view when you're focused at a longer focal length. So for example, at 70mm, it's a wider angle, so you'll see more of the background behind the person. And here at 200, it's taking a narrower section. It's like a blinkered horse. You can only see in a straight line, so you only see the small amount of background behind her. Here, that's been filled up more with the fence and the grass, whereas at 70, you got some of the sky and stuff in it as well. Okay, next one. A lot of people assume that at 200mm or at a longer focal length, you're going to have more out of focus area than you will on a wider lens. To an extent it's true, but only if you replicate the frame. If you get like a 24mm and a 200mm and you stand in the same place, take a shot of the same person or object, so if I'm standing from here shooting at, say, 24mm or 200mm, it's too close for 200mm, but obviously there will be a difference in the amount of depth of field. But as a portrait photographer, your frame is vitally important. So once you take that into account, so say if you go from 100mm to 200mm, you need to move twice as far away to keep your frame the same. And when you do that and keep your aperture the same, your depth of field is almost identical, only the slightest little difference. So I'll show you again on this one, shooting at 100 and 200. You'll see that the background and the frame and the compression that I talked about changes, but the actual amount of depth of field and the way the blur falls off is broadly similar. Okay, time for some more sample images. Here we were shooting at 100mm at around 1.5 meters away from Tina. Now that gives us a total depth of field of 6 centimeters. If you don't understand depth of field and how it's calculated, I'll put some links to previous videos in the caption below. Then here, going twice as far away to 3 meters and shooting at 200mm, we pretty much keep the same frame on her. So that's what you want as a portrait photographer, the same frame. Now that brings our depth of field down to 4 centimeters, depth of field being the total amount that's in sharp focus. Let's look at them again. Here's the 100mm. Now take I especially framed in the palm tree in the background. Look how out of focus it is there. And then again at 200mm. So of course the shots do look different, the compression is different, and the aspect overall is a bit different. But the amount that's in focus is pretty similar, 2 centimeters difference. So there's obvious advantages to the 70-200. It gives you a lot more flexibility in terms of if you could quantify that kind of thing, value for money and the range of different things you can use it for, they're fantastic. If you're looking at the Nikon, Canon, Sigma variants that both offer 70-200s and 85s, I would say the 70-200, they're the best built, they're faster to focus than the 85 from the same brand, and they are optically fantastic. But the 85s generally, those ones that I just mentioned, are sharper from 2.8 on. They have better fine contrast, better fine detail, they're a bit slower to focus, but the fact that you've got the option to go below 2.8 to 2, 1.8, 1.4, or even 1.2, for portraiture, that can just be really beautiful to not just, I mean, it's a simple, anyone can do it kind of effect to blow the background out, but it can be really effective to get rid of, you know, what is otherwise boring trees and just make it a nice massive out of focus green, or to put the little bit of focus just where you want it. Now I have to say I didn't exactly replicate the frame with 1.2 to show you exactly how much extra blur you get at 1.2 compared to 2.8. But here we go, here's two head to head. That was taken at 2.8 and then this one was at 1.2. Just look at the difference in the palm trees. They almost disappear at 1.2. And it's overexposed because even at 1/8,000th of a second, that was too much light to shoot on that day. For example, replicating the frame as we did in those last two, if we went into 1.27 meters away, that would have replicated the frame and that would give us 1 centimeter of depth of field as compared to 4 or 6. Here's a shot I took a few days later in a law library, and you can see the plane of her face and the book are in sharp focus, but everything else is just disappearing. That bookshelf behind her is only a couple of feet back. So, in answer to the specific question I get asked all the time, I own the 70-200, is it worth buying the 85? It's going to come down to you, because this one is $2,000, the Nikon one's over $1,500, something like that. Yeah. So, yeah, there you go. Cheaper than the 70-200, but it is a far more specialist lens. So if you're going to be working around 85mm and you find that's the way you like to shoot, then definitely a great investment. I wouldn't be without mine. If I had to choose getting rid of the 70-200 and the 85, for me, I'd keep the 85. But I think for most people, the 70-200 is the best. That said, if you want to do portraiture and you want prime speed, then the 85 is just a fantastic option there. Other than the price and slightly slower focus, there's not really much to criticize on them. I'm going to do a video in the next couple of weeks specifically on focal lengths for portraiture. Thanks, buddy. Feel the same. So stay tuned for that one. Leave us any questions or comments. Jump over to thatnikonguy.com, sign up to the forum and newsletter. If you haven't already, make sure you check out Tina's mad makeup / comedy / who knows editing where it's going to go. Wicked videos. And there's a link in the caption to that too. And we'll see you soon. Bye. Give me that back.
No,
Give it back.
I mean,
Take your phone too. As a portrait photographer, the 85mm is my favorite focal length. Fuck you. Yeah, your mum. As a portrait photographer, the 85mm is my favorite length. Let me start again.